Before the world called her a legend, before her smile lit up the silver screen, there was simply Norma Jeane. A young girl with a dream, a camera, and a hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be seen. This is the story of Marilyn Monroe, not just the Hollywood icon, but the woman behind the fame. Her rise, her heartbreak, and the mysteries that still surround her life decades after her death. Welcome to the Flashback Fame Files, where we dive deep into the real stories behind the world's most unforgettable stars. Marilyn Monroe's story didn't begin with glamour. She was born Norma Jeane Mortensen on June 1st, 1926 in Los Angeles, California. Her childhood was anything but stable. Her mother, Gladys, struggled with mental illness, and Marilyn spent most of her early years in foster homes and orphanages. One of her earliest memories was looking out of a small window in the Los Angeles orphans' home and dreaming about being famous, about being loved. It sounds almost cinematic. A lonely girl staring out into a world she'd one day conquer. But that longing for love and validation would shape Marilyn's life, both her triumphs and her tragedies. In the 1940s, during World War II, Norma Jeane worked at a munitions factory, spraying airplane parts with fire retardant. One day, a photographer from Yank magazine stopped by the factory to take pictures of women at work. That moment changed everything. Her photograph caught attention, not just for her beauty, but for her warmth and presence. Soon, she signed her first modeling contract, and with that, Norma Jeane transformed into Marilyn Monroe. Why Marilyn? Inspired by Broadway star Marilyn Miller. Why Monroe? It was her mother's maiden name. Together, the name sounded timeless, and so did she. By the early 1950s, Marilyn was Hollywood's golden girl. She signed with 20th Century Fox and began appearing in films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, and of course, The 7-Year Itch, the movie that gave us that iconic white dress moment over the subway grate. But behind that million-dollar smile was a woman constantly underestimated by the men who ran Hollywood. She was often typecast as the dumb blonde, but she was anything but. Marilyn once said, "I don't mind living in a man's world, as long as I can be a woman in it." And she proved it. In 1955, frustrated by being told she couldn't handle serious roles, Marilyn started her own production company, something nearly unheard of for women at the time. She took control of her career and her image before female empowerment was even a phrase. Of course, no story about Marilyn Monroe is complete without her famous romances. Her first marriage was to James Dougherty at just 16 years old, a practical decision to avoid returning to foster care. But fame changed everything. Then came her marriage to Joe DiMaggio, the baseball legend, America's sweetheart and America's sports hero, a match made in tabloids. But behind the scenes, Joe struggled with Marilyn's fame and the attention she drew. When her skirt famously blew up in that movie scene, Joe was furious. Their marriage lasted only 9 months. Her third marriage, to playwright Arthur Miller, was supposed to be different. He saw her intelligence, her vulnerability, her soul. But even that love couldn't protect her from her inner battles. Arthur once wrote, "She was the saddest girl I ever met who made the world laugh." Marilyn Monroe became a symbol of beauty, sensuality, and success. But inside, she wrestled with depression, anxiety, and addiction. She was often late to set, plagued by insecurity, terrified that she wasn't good enough. Hollywood painted her as a goddess, but she felt like a fragile soul trapped behind a mask. There's a heartbreaking irony in that. The woman the world adored couldn't find peace within herself. And yet, she kept going. She studied acting seriously under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio. alongside names like Marlon Brando. She wanted to be better, not just be famous. She once said, "I wanted to be wonderful, like the movies were wonderful." And in her own way, she was. By 1962, Marilyn was one of the most famous people on Earth. Her performance of Happy Birthday, Mr. President for John F. Kennedy became one of the most iconic and controversial moments in pop culture history. Just months later, she was gone. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home at age 36. The official cause? Probable suicide by overdose. But rumors of foul play, political cover-ups, and secret affairs still swirl to this day. Whether truth or myth, what's certain is that her light burned too bright and too fast. More than 60 years later, Marilyn Monroe remains an immortal icon, her image on posters, her name in songs, her story inspiring generations. But beyond the glitz, her life is a reminder. Fame can make you seen, but it can't make you whole. She taught the world to smile, to dream, and to love the imperfect. Because even as time moves on, the world still whispers her name. Thanks for watching the Flashback Fame Files. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Marilyn's life, hit like, subscribe, and share, because next week we'll be uncovering another legend lost to time.